This is the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast. I'm Dalton Gray.
And I'm Ryan Humphreys.
Broadcasting from our hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska. This show is brought to you by Stealthy Hunter. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, everybody. I'm Dalton.
I'm Mo.
And joined today by Andrew Wilson.
That's me.
Welcome into the show.
Well, thanks.
Been a long time coming.
Yeah, you asked me a while ago.
Yeah.
And I was quick to say no.
Yeah. Maybe you can move that mic just a little bit closer to the side. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. That's a little clearer. So we're just going to jump right into this here. For folks that don't know, you are one of the primary care members of Screaming Eagle Archery of Fairbanks.
I am.
So I was just in the shop earlier today, and you were fixing up some new arrows for me.
Yep.
How long have you been working for Screaming Eagle?
Oh, officially? A while. Probably 4 or 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
I've known Chris and Beth 8 or 10 or more. I honestly don't know how long it's been.
How long has the Fairbanks shop been here now?
I think we opened in 21.
Oh, wow. Has it
When
been
was
that long?
what was COVID year? 21? When everything was
Well,
crazy?
20 was the beginning of COVID because we got married in April of 20, and we had all the COVID stuff going on.
Okay.
So 20 was the kickoff.
Gotcha. So it must have been fall of 20, and then if I'm wrong, Chris will tell me all about it.
Okay.
'Cause I think I was wrapping up a house that year, and COVID was driving prices through the frickin' roof.
Was that the one you were building that I was working on the same year?
No, so
North
the
Pole?
house after that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So
You
I
built
did.
another one up here after that?
No, this one was in Wasilla.
Oh, okay.
So I built my
Okay.
sister's house here, and you
Right.
you guys did the HVAC on that,
Yeah.
all the trim out. And then the next year I did a house in Wasilla, and then we wrapped that one up December. And
Okay.
once we wrapped that one up, I started working at the shop. So we opened up Fairbanks store that fall.
Okay.
November 1, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think we're going on 4 years now.
Well, it's good to have a shop in town.
Yeah, it's fun.
We appreciate it. I'm not in there as often as I should, but some people would argue that I'm in there more often than I should.
Well, you shoot a trad bow, so that the fact that you come in there at all is pretty exciting.
Yeah,
So-
I was going to say the fact that two different people came in there looking for trad gear today while I was there seemed kind of surprising to
Yeah.
me.
There's actually, Fairbanks has a lot of traditional shooters. And,
Really?
And particularly where we're at now, we get a lot of random walk-ins, people that are interested in archery. And traditional is by far a lower price point of entry.
Right.
You know, a couple $100, you can get into a basic beginner recurve and some arrows and start flinging arrows.
And that's just people that just want to dink around the backyard type of deal.
Yep. We get a lot of college students walking by. You see the sign on the side of the road and just stop in and see what we're all about.
Really?
Yep. Sometimes they're crazy, and sometimes they buy bows and get into it. And yeah. Yeah, we get a lot of new shooters, and there's a lot of traditional folks running around town.
Interesting. Last summer, did you make it out to any of those 3D shoots when you were in
Not
town?
last summer. I've been to several of them over the years.
Yeah.
I've been a member of Golden North out there for, I don't know, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
I haven't made it out for 2 consecutive summers now. And it's a bummer because it's a lot of fun.
It is. Yep.
It's a riot. And now that I'm going to be in town more this summer and fall, just had some scheduling changes here this year, some personal plans going on, some
Right.
projects. But now that I'll be in town a lot more this summer, I think I'm going to try to go.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. And Ian became president a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And they've really stretched the lanes out a lot more for the compound guys. You know,
Oh, good.
Traditionally, it was more of a traditional crowd.
Right.
So a lot of close shots and that kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
a lot of compound guys have been requesting longer shots. So they're stretching them out the last few years now.
I had never shot my trad bow out there before either.
Okay.
I would always bring my compound when we were going because we went for a couple of summers pretty consistently. You know, I really enjoyed shooting in their little tournament.
Yeah.
In the middle of the summer, I always thought that was a lot of fun, a little competitive edge.
Yep.
And there were a few guys going that I would shoot with. You know, try to get in a group with them and go walk the lanes with them. Matt Size was one of them.
Oh, okay. That's where you guys met, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was on the show here several episodes ago now. But he and I would shoot together when we were there at the same time. But I remember that being an issue. Like it seemed like it was really built for trad shooters.
It was,
because a long shot on one of those lanes for the compound flag was like 28 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a closer one at like 18 for the trad guys.
Yep.
There was always 2 flags. And then the only way that we could shoot long with a compound was up or down the road at the elk or the caribou.
Yeah, they would put those across the road sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Matt and I walked up the road one time and got out to about 80.
Nice.
And that was about it. But, you're yelling clear down the road in case guys are walking across from target to target. But, yeah, that's a lot of fun. And it's nice because you don't have to spend all the money to buy all those 3D targets.
Right.
I mean, so that's a good question, is how much is a full life-size, say, like a whitetail 3D target going for these days?
The prices vary a lot. Reinhardt is our primary 3D target line. We think that they're the best target. They have self-healing foam. They last a lot longer than some of the other brands out there. Prices will vary. I don't know about whitetail specifically, but I
just
know
like something in that size.
A doll sheep target, a standing doll, is going to run you $700 if I remember right.
Wow.
Yep. Any of your bigger targets are going to be pushing, $1,500, $2,000.
And that's like
your caribou and your buffalo elk. Yep.
Do they have a life-size moose one?
I don't know if Golden North has one yet or not.
Well, no, but to
They
buy
do.
from Reinhardt.
Reinhardt does have one. Yep. There's a few of them running around the state.
That'd be kind of a fun one to have.
Yep. I think Black Sheep Bowman on J Bear has one, if I remember right. I think Kenai Peninsula Archers, they have one.
Is Black Sheep Bowman like an archery club?
Yeah. Yep. They've been.
What a cool name.
I want to butcher all these years, but I feel like they've been in a club since like the 60s, maybe. It's been a long time.
Wow.
On J Bear there. Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Have to make the trip down there just to shoot their moose target.
There you go. Yep. They partner up with Northwest Archers quite a bit.
Okay.
And they're the local club in Anchorage.
Gotcha.
And yeah, they'll co-host a lot of different tournaments throughout the summertime.
Interesting.
Yep.
So you got out and did some fun stuff last year, and that's what we're all about.
Yep, we try.
You had some interesting stories.
For last year specifically?
Well, so that there are several that I'd kind of like to hear about.
Okay.
I guess we'll start with the best. We'll eat our dessert first.
Sure.
You got an ibex.
I did.
So lay that story out for me.
So I guess we'll go all the way back to when I was pert near in diapers watching the VHS hunting videos with my dad. Okay. He had a Marco Polo sheep hunt on. And I distinctly remember him saying, I'll never shoot one of those. Those are for doctors and lawyers. Like, I'll never be on a hunt like that. Yeah. So fast forward a long time now. I think it was Justin Schaefer had posted some stuff on Instagram about his Kyrgyzstan hunt.
Yeah.
And he shot ibex and a Marco Polo. And I just messaged him and just kind of asked him who he hunted with. Mm-hmm. And he told me. So I messaged that guy because I'm always curious on pricing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I says, hey, I heard Justin just booked with you guys recently and, interested in pricing and that kind of thing. And he says, well, here's the price for Marco Polo and here's the price for ibex. And it was a lot less expensive than I thought it was going to be. And he said, this is the last year that we can for sure hunt for sure hunt Marco Polo in Kyrgyzstan. There's a bunch of government stuff going on and they were talking about closing the hunting altogether.
Okay.
So I decided to jump in with both feet and book a hunt. Ended up booking with my dad. He's always wanted to hunt ibex. So my dad and good friend Joey down in Wasilla, the three of us booked a hunt. So we ended up going in October of 22, I think. Mm-hmm. So yep, flew over there and it was a very fast hunt. It took 2 days to get to base camp. So we flew from here to, I forget where all we stopped. We ended up in Bishkek. Okay. So we got picked up there. The outfitter had an English-speaking interpreter there to pick us up. So all that was pretty straightforward. Yeah. Got all the paperwork done, checked in through customs, and got in a van and drove for about 6 hours. And got into a small town, and then we transferred to an old, like a Russian army van, very old ghetto rig, but we climbed into that, and then we're on like our four-wheeler trails. It was just a 2-track through the mountains, and we rode that for a while to get to base camp. Okay. So we got into base camp, and that was pretty. It was pretty crude, but it was dry. Like the guest houses were connexes that they'd retrofitted into living quarters and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So, yep, we got into base camp next morning, checked our guns, shot a little bit, then climbed on horses and rode horses about 5 hours into spike camp. That's where we started hunting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that your first time ever hunting off horseback?
I think so, yeah. I mean, we did a little bit. We had horses growing up, so we did the occasional, trail ride that we were hunting, call hunting, but
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, that was our first real horseback hunt.
Not to get off on a sidetrack here, but did you ever end up going baiting with Jeff and your dad's old partner that had horses that tried to bear bait with them?
I don't remember that story.
Maybe we'll tell that one off the air.
Yeah, that's a.
Had horses that was gonna bear bait.
That
Yeah.
might have
Bear
been
bait with the
before your
horses.
time. Because
It probably was.
that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
But-
that was right as Jeff was moving up here.
right after
Oh,
he
okay.
moved up here. I don't know
Yeah.
if he'd really even baited yet.
Yeah. And then he went out with a friend of his at the time,
okay.
and he was running a bear bait with horses.
They
Oh,
attempt-
Jared, or not
Yeah,
Jared,
yeah,
Ron.
Yeah, they
Uh,
attempted to run.
I
bear bait
remember
with
hearing the
horses.
stories, but
Yes.
I was definitely either not born or in diapers at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time
I
ago.
remember Jeff talking about how he was more afraid of the horses than he was the bait.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, horses are knotheads sometimes.
Yeah. So those ones give you guys any troubles in the mountains?
No, they
or-
were the best horses I've ever been around, especially mountain horses.
Huh.
They were not much bigger than ponies, 13.2, maybe
Oh, really?
14 hands, really short little guys.
Wow.
Kind of like mini Morgans, I guess.
Hmm.
Super calm. We were going across a really nasty side hill one day, and I was, I was on a mountain hunt, so I had my Kennetreks on, brand spanking new. And he fell over. It was walking on the ice and
Oh,
jumped
boy.
back up, and I'd hung my offside stirrup, and I was hanging upside down on this horse. And that horse stood there, didn't move a muscle until the guides finally noticed that I was upside down, and they made their way back over to me to get me untangled.
No way.
Yeah, any horse we had growing up, he would have freaked out and dragged me all the way back to the house. But no, that one just stood there and hung out until they got me sorted out and right side up.
Wow. So how high up were you guys riding those horses up to Spike Camp?
Spike camp was about 13,000. No, it wasn't either. Maybe 10,000 because I think the highest we went was 13,000.
Okay.
But yep, right around 9,200 or something like that.
Are there snow up top then, I would assume?
I was really surprised. There's a little bit of snow, but we weren't hunting in the snow by any means. Just like hunting in September here probably.
And you said that was what time of year? That was October?
That was in October. Yep.
October, okay.
The weather was kind of interesting. So you're like in high desert. We could drive tent stakes and all that, no problem.
Oh, really?
We didn't have thermometers or anything like that, so I have no idea what the actual temperature was. But when the sun went down, it was frickin' cold. It was cold. But as soon as the sun popped out, you could take gloves off and work, and everything was fine. There was a lot of heat in the sun at that elevation, apparently.
Interesting.
I was very surprised.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder if that has anything to do with like the angle.
Very well could be.
Huh.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, so you guys made it up there. And
Yeah, so we made it up, and we took a lot more time shooting guns than they would have liked that morning, because we wanted to make sure our guns were on, and they just wanted us to. We hit the cardboard box. We're good to go.
Right.
So we finally got up there, and it was getting late afternoon. We set up camp, and they don't have optics. Like I think the head guy had a set of Diamondbacks or something like that. So they were relying on our spotting scope and our high-end binoculars. So we're setting up camp, and they take my spotting scope away right away, and they're glassing the mountains, and they find sheep across the valley, and some really good ones based off of what we could see at that distance. So
Wow.
yep. So we had something to chase the next morning, and they knew a handful of words in English. Marco Polo, ibex, shoot. And then when it was time to eat, tea was their word for food. And they had one big group camp that all the guides and packers and everybody just piled into at night, and that was also the food shack.
Oh.
So they'd roll all their bedding out of the way, and we'd just sit around a circle, and it was all very much community food. Like
Yeah.
all the dirty dishes were in a pile in the middle, and they just shook them out and kind of wiped out the guest bowls.
Yeah.
And my dad and Joey and I, we got our own bowl and spoon, and they shared a lot of them, 2, sometimes 3 guys to one bowl, and they just make a big mash, and
Yeah.
that was food. Yep. So that was interesting.
What was the food supply like?
It was a lot better than I expected, honestly.
Okay.
a lot of bread, a lot of summer sausage for like lunches and that kind of thing. They have a loaf of bread. It's kind of almost like a big round bagel, I guess. But it kept really well. They didn't have to keep it, you know, in a Ziploc bag or anything like that, or airtight. It didn't dry out or anything. So that was kind of interesting. So they had bread and butter at all the meals. That was kind of a staple. Breakfast was usually some kind of ramen with whatever they wanted to throw into it to add flavor. A lot of tea. They had some instant coffee. So that was pretty good. Evening times, they usually made some kind of either pasta or something along those lines with meat in it. So it was pretty decent.
Yeah.
We only got into the interesting stuff once, and that was our last night in camp. So once we get to the end of the story, no, it wasn't quite that exciting.
Yeah, I guess we won't spoil it yet.
Yeah. So we had supper, crawled into bed. Sidebar: when we landed in Bishkek, Joey's gear never showed up.
Oh.
So yeah, and we're a long freaking ways from camp, so we have to go. We can't just sit around. So he had no gun, no hunting clothes, no nothing. He had what he had in his carry-on, and that was it.
Oh, wow.
He did put a sleeping bag in there, but that was about it as far as hunting equipment. No boots, no puffies, no nothing. But it's either get left behind or go, so off we went. And when we got into base camp, there was another hunting party that had just come in from Spike Camp. I forget the guys' names, but they were all from Montana. And they were done, so he cobbled up an entire gear list from those guys. Borrowed boots, borrowed everything from those three guys, and he got himself a full kit put together.
Wow.
Yep. So my dad and I took a tent, so we climbed into the Hilleberg, and then Joey slept in one of their tents with their government inspector guy. And he was pretty cold. His sleeping bag was mediocre at best, but he made it through. So that's a fun little tidbit. He had no gun, no nothing.
Did he end up getting his stuff back on the way out?
He did. When we got back into town, he was able to get all of it. It was a little bit interesting getting his gun back. It cost him his high school pocket knife, but
Oh, really?
Yep. He is convinced that the local cop was going to keep the gun, except for he didn't think he could get ammo for it. He was shooting a 280 Ackley, and he kept saying 308, I think, and Joey's like, no, 280 Ackley, 308, no, 280 Ackley. And so he grabbed his knife out of his bow case, and it was a high school graduation present, and basically suggested that be a gift to him for giving his gun back.
Well, hey, when in Kyrgyzstan.
Yep. It was very different over there.
Huh.
That's for sure.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, yep. So we crawl into our bedrolls and get up the next morning. We had wanted to hunt together, but that wasn't going to happen. There was three of us, and that's just a little bit too big of a hunting party. So my dad and Joey were both hunting ibex specifically. So they went off chasing ibex, and then I went with another group, and we were out looking for sheep. Spent the day chasing them up and down and around, and I spent a full day that we crossed 3 different ridges, I think. They are the spookiest animals I've ever seen.
I was just going to ask.
It was impressive.
How many of them were there in a?
There were a lot.
Group.
Yep. So we hunted one band the whole time.
Okay.
And there had to have been a dozen or more rams in that particular bunch.
And so was it rams and ewes together?
So they would mix. They stayed so the rams stayed together and the ewes and lambs stayed together, but they would intermingle on occasion. There were a couple of different instances where they were kind of one big group, but they were definitely 2 distinct little.
Yeah, I've seen some
bands.
I've seen some videos and some pictures of them, and there's, I mean, in some of them it looks like there's 100 or more.
Yeah,
and it's rams, ewes, lambs, and they're all together. It's just like a big herd of them.
Yeah,
they're just up and down the mountain. They all kind of seem to stick together. But again, I don't know if that's just time of year, because you can see similar things up here depending on time of year. Where a lot of them band together. But that's
was
interesting.
It was definitely not like that, but there was probably 30 or 40 of them in that valley.
That's still a lot.
There was a bunch, especially when you're used to sheep hunting up here.
Right. Yeah. Wow. This is what it used to be like.
Right. Yep. So yeah, we ended up not shooting a sheep that day. We chased them a little bit, but spent a lot of time watching, a lot of video, a lot of pictures.
So how far away would they bust you?
If they could see us, they were gone. 1,000 yards plus, super easy, no problem. The first time they saw us, we were actually heading toward the band of rams, and we popped up just over a little ridge, and there were some ewes and lambs down in the bottom, a ways below us. And when they saw us, instead of running up the opposite mountain, they ran straight at us and ran past us to go up the hill with the rest of the sheep.
Wow.
I've never seen critters do that before, so that was kind of interesting. And then, of course, they grabbed everything in the valley, and over the top they went.
Yeah.
So we backed out, went up the next drainage, and saw them again, and they were already across the valley.
Wow.
There was one time the rams were just crossing the bottom and starting to go up the other side, and the head guy, he starts pointing and hollering, "Marco Polo, shoot, shoot." I could tell they were rams, and I ranged them at 680 yards running, and I'm not shooting any of those instances. But he was begging me to pull the trigger. No freaking way. I had anticipated it sheep hunting like we do up here. You see rams, you put spotter on them, you hem and haw, and decide if you want to shoot something, and then put a sneak on them, and then go kill them. And they are very much Wild West over there. I start slinging lead as soon as you can, but
Yeah.
we would use the spotter if they were like a long ways off, and we were making a game plan or something like that. But other than that, there was no instance where we put the spotter on them before them yelling at me to shoot.
And were they bummed out that you didn't shoot them running at 600 plus?
Well, I didn't speak their language, so I'm not sure, but I would imagine. But I had told them 500 was my hard limit. I shot that distance in practice a few times, but I've never shot an animal even close to that kind of distance.
Yeah.
But in base camp, I hit a few rocks with that, and the gun was shooting pretty decent. I figured if I needed a hard limit, that would be it. So yeah, I came back the next day. My dad and Joey, they didn't shoot ibex either. They were just too high up in the rocks. The second morning of the hunt, we got up and we just headed right after breakfast, headed up to the next valley. We just kind of assumed they'd go up and over.
Yeah.
And they did. They were actually way down on the bottom. And there were, in that band, there were two really good rams. Like the tips were turned back down to the ground. I mean, they were long rams.
Wow.
Probably mid 50s would be my guess. And I was pretty apprehensive about not killing a sheep, and that's probably where I started thinking incorrectly. Because after the first day, we hadn't killed one. In that hunting party we run into in base camp, one of their guys had not killed a sheep yet, and he was out his entire hunt basically, or the price of it, with nothing to show. So I was a little apprehensive about that. And we see the sheep, we climb up, and then the lambs and ewes are down the bottom feeding, and we're stuck, so we're laying there. And then they start hollering, "Marco Polo, shoot," again. And I can't find them. I'm looking, and they kept saying, "Mamas and babies downhill." So I thought they meant the rams were below the ewes and lambs. So I'm looking below them, and there ain't no freaking sheep down there. It's the bottom of the valley.
Yeah.
And apparently what they meant were the ewes and lambs were below the rams.
Oh.
So I was supposed to have been looking uphill. And I finally found them just as the last four were going behind a rock, kind of heading uphill. I was like, well, frick, messed that up.
Yeah.
And so now I'm starting to get worried, and they're starting to get frustrated because I'm apparently blind as a bat when it comes to spotting brown critters in brown country.
Yeah.
So we're laying there, and then a minute later they start hollering again, and they had worked up the drainage, and they were starting to pop over the skyline.
Okay.
And there's a ram up there, and again, Marco Polo, shoot.
Yeah.
And I looked, and I really wanted to shoot a really good ram, but I also didn't want to come home empty-handed. So I was running SIG binoculars with their ballistics data in there and all that for my gun, and that's a pretty cool system.
Yeah.
It reads elevation and temperature and all that good stuff.
Right.
They are not good optics.
Right.
Definitely was not impressed with that. But so I had those, so I didn't have good binoculars as far as that goes, but I could see a ram and I could see his horns tilt out. So I knew he at least had something on there, and then I'd ask the guys, is that a good one? Yeah, shoot. And I'd range them, and they were 485. Okay. Dialed my turret. And then it was steep enough, and we were in 4 inches of snow, so I kept sliding downhill. And finally, the packer shoved his boot out, and I got to climb up against that with my toes and hold still. And finally ended up pulling the trigger on that one. And they start hollering, shoot again, and I've long since slid down the hill 10 inches and lost him in my scope. And by the time I found him, he was rolling. So I center punched him right through the shoulder.
Nice.
Yep. So he died. It wasn't a monster. He was about 45 inches. Still a
Yeah.
still a pretty cool animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did that, and that was 9:30 in the morning.
Wow.
We were close enough to camp that they heard us hollering, heard the gunshot. My dad and Joey, so they knew we'd killed one. So that was pretty cool.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yep. Got them all cut up, hauled back to camp, and then we went out looking for ibex and spent the day. We found some really good ones, but they were up at the head of a valley in the bottom, and there's no way to get within a mile of them. They were way out in the wide open.
Yeah.
So we came back, and they started cutting up sheep meat for supper. And Joey and my dad were not home yet. And I think they finally rolled in at like 10:30 at night, way past dark. They both shot ibex.
Oh, nice.
Apparently, let's see. No, my dad shot 2. He shot both of his, and then Joey shot 1.
Okay.
And then apparently Joey's horse decided to quit in the middle of the river, so they just had Joey get off, climbed on one of the guide's horses. The guides doubled up and just left the horse in the middle of the river, and off the camp they went.
Did any of them have headlamps at all?
Oh, no headlamps. We had some headlamps, but that was about it.
Wow.
Yep. So they finally get back, and they threw up just a bunch of random sheep meat in a pot and boiled the crap out of it. And they had some noodles they'd thrown in there, and that was supper. But we're eating, but in that pot was something they cut up into like 1-inch wide long strips, and they'd thrown in there. It was really gummy. They gave all of us hunters one, and we sucked her down. At least I did, my dad did, and Joey loved them. Like, he ate it, and he was excited, and he kept asking for more, and they kept laughing and kept giving it to him, and he kept eating it. It wasn't until like last summer he realized he was eating intestine. Yeah, he had no idea. It was just a gummy, rubbery mess. I mean, my stomach was turning pretty hard, but I got her down.
Wow.
But yeah, Joey was gobbling them up like crazy. Yep, he loved it.
That's pretty funny.
Yep. And then the next morning we got up, we ran up another valley, and Joey and I both shot our ibex. We were done.
Wow.
Yep.
What gun did you bring over there?
I took my Tika 300.
Win mag?
Yeah. Yep.
You
One
can't
gun.
beat it.
No, it did. It does a lot better than my Savage did. That gun didn't shoot for crap.
Yeah.
Yep. I fought that for 3 or 4 years, and then I really wanted a 5-pound 300 is what I wanted when I decided I was gonna buy a new gun, and I could not find one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
The lightest gun I found was a Cooper, and I think they wanted $5,500 for it or something like that. Side note, I'm left-handed, so that severely limits my rifle selection.
Right.
So I'd found that one, and then I saw the Tika was less than a half a pound heavier for $850. So that kind of made my decision for me.
Yeah, I mean, we always joke about you can't beat a Tika. Obviously, you can, and we're just being facetious. But for the money, it's a great choice.
For the value.
Yeah. As poorly as I shoot it, it's just fine. Yep.
Wow. Well, that's quite the event.
Yeah, it was fun.
And you got the ibex back. Have you gotten the Marco Polo back yet, too?
Oh, that's a whole nother story.
Is that an import issue?
It is a Kyrgyzstan paperwork issue right now. So for a while, 3 weeks before I was scheduled to go over there, I found out that U.S. Fish and Wildlife had put a stop on all our Garley CITES permits. There was some paperwork fiascos going on with some of the other countries.
And so why would they have done that? Was it like a disease concern type of thing?
So and I don't know the details of how they do all their stuff, but basically U.S. Fish and Wildlife requires a harvest report from all the Argali countries. Okay. Anybody that's importing Argali, they want a harvest report and numbers and stats and all this stuff. And there was a country that had doctored an old report with new dates and sent it in, and they caught it. So basically they just sent over counterfeit documents, and U.S. said nope and shut down all imports until they got everything sorted out.
Wow.
So they've just recently opened CITES permits back up, and they're issuing permits again. Wow. And I found out that our guys in Kyrgyzstan, they messed up some paperwork, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with all that.
Oh, with your ramp.
With my ramp specifically, yep. I know 2 other guys that went to the same camp. 2 trips, like we all went the exact same time, one group after the other, and the other 2 guys have their permits and they're ready to get their sheep shipped back over. So
Wow.
But mine is a paperwork issue that I can tell you about later.
Interesting.
Yep.
And so for folks that don't know, Argali is a sheep.
Yep.
You know, term, I suppose, would be a very basic way of putting it. But
Yeah, so Argali is the species, and
Right.
they have several subspecies that are there. Yep.
Yeah, they have Marco Polo. What's the other one that's even bigger than Marco Polo?
So Marco Polo is the general name.
Yeah.
They have the subspecies would be like we were hunting Humi Argali. That's what's local to Kyrgyzstan. The quote Marco Polo in Tajikistan is one of the longest ones out there.
Okay.
There's Altai
one-
Argali in Mongolia.
Yeah,
There's
that was the one
3
in
different
Mongolia.
species of Argali in Mongolia, and I can't remember all of them.
Those ones are just super, super heavy horned, it looked like.
Yep. Yeah, and
Massive.
they look even bigger because they have no hair, it seems like, in any of the videos I've seen. Like,
Oh, really?
it seems like it's summertime on most of those hunts.
Yeah.
Super
Yeah.
thin hair, kind of like a desert bighorn is what I
Right.
remember saying.
Right,
So
yeah.
the horns just look that much bigger on those animals.
Oh,
but,
interesting.
Yeah, massive bases.
And then ibex is a capra species.
Yes.
It's a part of the goat family.
Correct.
Huh. And they just coexist in the same basic zip code?
Pretty much, yep.
Yeah.
They don't intermingle per se, but they're definitely in the same valleys, on the same mountains. The ibex are in the, just like over here, they're in the trash. And I was surprised how low the sheep were. The sheep were down in the grassy valleys. Valleys at 12,000 feet.
Right,
But
right.
still, they weren't in the hard rocks or anything unless we had pushed them over a ridge. So that was kind of neat to see. And then in the ibex, they were up literally in the cliffs.
Interesting.
Yep.
Huh. One more question about that, and then I'm good to move on unless Mo has questions. But what bullet did you shoot?
So I shot an ALDX.
A 200?
I believe so. Yep.
Factory ammo, yeah.
No, I had a bunch of ammo from Unknown Munitions.
Oh, right on.
Yep. So one of Joey's buddies was running that, and I've been a pretty hardcore copper guy always, and that gun doesn't like them. And I was fighting it, and I've tried many times to make a copper bullet shoot good, and I just beyond 200 yards, it just seems to go crazy. And I don't know if that's the twist on those Tika barrels, because it's a pretty mild twist.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that or what it is, but the ELDX shot really well, even the 200 grainers. So
Yeah.
that's what I ended up taking over there.
Yeah. Well, that's a great choice.
Seemed to do a pretty good job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no doubt. Certainly a lot higher BC than you would get for a copper bullet.
Right.
You know, buck the wind a lot better up there.
Yeah.
Huh. But do you have anything else to?
I don't think so.
Well, now's a good time for just a short break, and we'll be right back with more stories. You want to take a break or anything?
I'm fine.
Okay. You got to pee?
Nope.
And we're back from the commercial break. Well, from there, let's talk archery and bears. The main thing. So you shot one last year
I did.
with your recurve.
Yep.
How long have you been shooting a traditional bow?
Well, obviously I shot him when I was a kid because that was a fun thing to do. But as far as seriously learning how to shoot a recurve, I would say 2.5, 3 years. 10 or 11 years ago, I shot one kind of recreationally, I guess. Just shot it at the indoor range a little bit, one day a week.
Yeah.
But as far as actively trying to get proficient with it, probably 2 years.
Okay.
Yep. I actually won a Black Widow in a raffle, and that's what kind of
Oh, is-
started that whole thing.
You
Yep.
won your Black Widow?
I did. Yep.
No way.
Yep.
That exact one.
Yep. So if you go to the Golden North Banquet every spring, they raffle off a Black Widow every year.
Really?
$5 a ticket, and it's usually not a ton of people there. So if
They
you
had
got
a
enough money-
left-handed Black Widow recurve.
No, so they have been partnered up with Black Widow for as long as I know. So
Oh, okay.
they raffle it off, and you get to pick.
I see.
So the raffle that you win is for one of their basic models. You don't get exotic woods or anything like that. But left hand, right hand, your specs, whatever draw weight you want, limb length, everything. If you wanted to get custom, you can pay for that out of pocket yourself. So I did exotic wood, and that cost me a couple $100. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the nice thing about that raffle is they build it for you.
Wow. Well, that's pretty sweet.
So anybody that wants one, come to the banquet, join the club, become a member, and buy some raffle tickets.
Yeah. I still haven't been to a banquet.
Yeah.
I think 2 or 3 years ago I won the compound 3D match in the summer, And then somebody else brought me the the little
about your medal or your trophy or whatever they did that year?
It was a little medal, and I wasn't even there. I'd forgotten about it. I got the email, and then somebody else saw me and said, "Oh, hey, I picked this up for you." Oh, it might have been you. Was it you?
It could have been because we had the shop then. So I know I had a handful of medals for people that hadn't shown up. Yep.
Well, now I feel bad. And I could have got a second Black Widow.
Yep.
Oh, well. Well, maybe I'll go this year.
There you go.
So what'd you end up getting for a bow?
Oh, I didn't look at that part. I think I got the PMA. It's a 60-incher. PMA is the medium riser, if I remember right.
Well, so the PSA is in the middle. The PMA is the long one.
Okay, then I got the PSA.
Yeah, that's the same one I have.
Oh, is it? Okay,
yeah, it's
gotcha.
got the 4-inch sight window. The PMA
Yes.
has a big sight window.
Yeah, like 5.5 inches or something like that. Yeah.
My dad's got that one.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, I talked to Roger down there, and I just kind of told him my draw length and what I wanted to do, and I'd shot 62-inch bows in the past and asked him what he liked or what he suggested.
Yeah.
And he said probably the PSA with the 60-inch limbs would be good.
Nice.
So we did that. I'm a little bit shorter draw length, so we did 53 pounds at 27 inches, so I could be legal for moose. I've definitely since stretched out a little bit as I've learned to shoot that. But yeah, low 50s.
Yeah.
And they had just started making their carbon limbs, I think, when I'd won that. And I talked to Roger about getting those.
Yeah.
And he said, honestly, at your draw length and your draw weight, you're not really going to see a huge difference in speed, maybe 2 feet. And I mean, if you want like the look, then sure, spend the extra money on it. But
And so is that carbon veneers or cores?
veneers, I think.
Really?
I don't know the exact construction.
I don't know that I've even seen those.
Yeah. So I think they're in their current catalog now. They've been making them for a couple of years, but they're supposed to be a little faster, a little snappier. But yep. But he said at your specs, you're not going to see a huge speed increase. And I've always wanted an exotic wood widow anyway. So that was a pretty easy decision.
What did you go with for your limbs? I was looking at it today at the shop, but I didn't pay attention.
So that is spalted maple.
Okay.
I'd never seen it before. I saw one picture on their website, maybe their Facebook page.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went with that. I really like the spalted looks.
Yeah. And is that an ironwood riser?
I think so. So normally when you pick a wood with Black Widow, you like if I'd have picked now I'm drawing a blank. If I'd have picked any other wood, it would have been the same wood in the riser and in the limbs.
Okay.
But with the spalted maple, they only do the limb veneers with that. So I don't know if it has to do with integrity or what. But
Gotcha.
So I just told Roger, just pick a wood for the riser that looks good. You guys do this for a living. I don't really care.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the riser's made out of.
Yeah. It looks like ironwood. It's that dark chocolate.
That
brown
is true.
color.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting wood to use in a bow.
Yeah.
I've always thought that looked cool though.
Yep.
That stuff is stout.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Interesting.
I've always liked Black Widows and always wanted to have one. So it worked out pretty good.
You and me both. Yeah. Growing up, always shooting a bow as a kid, and then I'm always looking at my dad's bow. Like one day I'll be done growing and I can shoot. I can go out and buy one and I won't outgrow it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So you got into shooting it a lot.
Yeah.
And then you took it hunting last year.
I did. So my dad, he's been baiting for a long time, and he lives here in town. I live in Wasilla now. So my brother-in-law usually does the day in, day out baiting and hunting with him. And he called me and said, Chris has got guard duty, so if you want to come out and hunt bears, I've got an empty stand. So I was wishy-washy on what bow to bring up until the time I climbed in the truck. Because I really wanted to try the recurve, but I was still... I wasn't very confident in it. I can shoot really good groups, and then I'd frickin' bomb one and not know why. Recurve is a lot of fun, but it is super frustrating.
Yep. Yes, it is.
So I was going to bring both of them up and make up my mind when I got to town, and at the last minute I said if I'm going to use a recurve, I can only take the recurve up. So I took the compound out of the truck, and off we went.
Yep. There you go.
Yep.
So you guys made it in there, and let's hear how that went.
So we got in late, as is normally the case. We're always behind, it seems like.
Yeah.
So we got the truck parked, and he said, "Well, let's just run in real quick and just see what we're working with. Grab your bow," and off we went.
About what time of night was this?
Oh, 8:30 probably.
Yeah.
And get up there, he's packing the gun, and I've got my bow, and of course there's a grizzly bear on the bait already, so we run it off.
Of course. That just fits that spot.
Yep. So run it off, and he said, bait's wiped out, no food, nothing.
Okay.
So he put his pack in the tree stand with his bug dope and thermocells and all that. And I climbed. He said, well, just hang out here. I'm going to go grab a bag of dog food. At least get some food there to keep a bear entertained if he shows up.
Yeah.
And he wasn't gone 3 minutes, and a little black bear walked in. No, 4.5, 5 footer probably. And it probably took my dad 15 or 20 minutes to come back, I would guess, doing the round trip. I can't remember. I think he took his gun with him, probably. I was in the tree. So this bear is thinking around. He's there long enough that I had decided I'm not going to shoot him. And then I thought, well, everybody says you should at least get blood on your bow, so maybe I just shoot this little dinker, be the first bow with a recurve, and that'd be pretty cool. So I'm thinking about shooting him, and then I remember you don't shoot big bears if you shoot little bears, so I decided not to shoot him. So this goes back and forth half a dozen times before my dad finally shows up. And when he comes in, he sees the bear on the bait. And he says, well, I'm just going to hang out here in case you decide to shoot him. And I told him, well, he's too small to shoot, so come on. And he didn't hear me. So 15 or 20 minutes later, he hollers again, says, bugs are killing me. I've got to come get my bug dope. So he runs, and the bear never leaves. The bear never leaves the circle at all.
Huh.
He's sitting there, and I'm watching him. I think I had a pistol on me, so I had it out just because I'm still sitting in the tree.
Yeah.
He dumps the dog food, and this bear never leaves. Dumps the dog food, rolls the bag up, sticks it in a tree, and climbs in the stand, and bear goes back to eating again. He was there for probably an hour and a half, and then blows and tears out of there, and you can hear him running off back behind us with something hot on his heels.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that grizzly bear came back. And then it was pretty dead for a couple of hours before that other bear had come in. Okay. The black bear I'd seen right away, and then he kind of made a half circle. I saw him in the trees and watched him come in. This bear just appeared 15 feet away. It was pretty neat. And my dad's thinking, oh, bear, and I stand up in it. So I'm left-handed, like I mentioned earlier, and everybody else is right-handed. So this is a right-handed tree stand. And my dad uses really big trees for his tree stands. So
If it's bigger than PVC, then what's the point?
Sometimes you just grab like 3 and hold them together, right?
Yep.
Or should I say, he will, and my dad will too, and I've sat in those stands too.
Yep. So I've got to stand up, turn around, face the tree, and then I've got to shoot standing up. So standing up from a 4-inch tree and trying to shoot a bull is not the easiest thing you've ever done. So he comes in and goes, eats, and he immediately lays down, quartering away with his legs covering up everything. I slowly stand up, turn around, bang my recurve limb off the tree stand and make a bunch of racket, and the bear don't care. And he probably laid there for 25 or 30 minutes and would not move. He'd stand up and turn away from me and then lay back down.
He's watching out for that grizzly bear.
I guess. It didn't really pay much attention. He wasn't really looking around, just
really?
eating, hanging out. Yep.
Huh.
Didn't seem too concerned about anything. And then after 30 minutes or so, he finally stood up, quartering away, and I shot him high and hit him in the spine, and he flipped upside down hollering. And I couldn't shoot him again. He had sticks in the way and legs, so I'm just sitting there with an arrow knocked weight, and he finally rolls over and stands up, and I shot him again, and that arrow zipped right through him. And at that point, he hauled himself out, and my dad says, I think we should chase him. I said, okay, I hadn't done this before. So I bail out of the tree stand, knocking around. We are jogging through the woods after this bear. Finally catch up to him, and he was in this big, nasty brush pile, and we snuck in there and shot him one more time, and he died. But by far, the biggest rush I've ever had hunting an animal. It beat Kyrgyzstan, it beat Africa, it beat everything.
Doing it with a rake.
Yep. So, there is something else about shooting something with a recurve.
Yeah. It's just different.
It is.
That's I was telling my wife that because I've been shooting my recurve more lately. Mm-hmm. That's why I was in the shop today to get some more recurve arrows made up. And I haven't killed anything with a recurve. And I've only ever killed one big game animal with a recurve.
Okay.
And that was my first black bear. Mm-hmm. And I was with Jeff, not far from there.
Okay.
And at the middle spot.
Yeah.
And I shot one there. And that was the first bear I'd ever killed. And I shot it with my Bob Lee recurve that I grew up as. Well, that was the one that I'd shot probably from the time I was about 14. And by that time, I was 16 or 17 years old.
Gotcha.
And so, but that rush, like you're talking about, I thought, okay, this is bear hunting. Over the years and shooting a bunch more bears in between then and now, I realized that's not bear hunting because I've killed a bunch of them with a rifle, and now I've killed quite a few of them with a compound. And it's fun with a rifle. It's more fun with a compound. But I've never been able to recreate the feeling of shooting it with a trad bow.
Right.
And I don't think that it was just the rush of shooting a bear. And I don't think it was just the first bear. There's just something different about doing it with a trad bow.
Yep.
And so that's why this year I'm pretty dedicated, at least at this point. Now, when I get home from
just
guiding,
commit, you'll be fine.
when I get home from guiding and I shoot it in the yard a few times before I head out to the bait, and I shoot like crap, then I might just pick up my wheel bow and
Oh, it'll be fine.
I don't know. But I'm really trying to commit to shooting my recurve this spring again.
I think it's because, like, with a rifle, you've got a scope or iron sights, whatever you have. You know, you put the pin where you want the bullet to go and pull the trigger, and that's all there's to it. With a compound, very similar.
Right.
You've got a specific draw length, and everything is very easy,
Right.
especially on a bear bait when you're close.
Right.
You know, line a peep sight and the side up,
11
pin where you
yards.
want it, pull the trigger.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Kind of hard to mess up 11 yards.
Right.
Not saying that it can't happen.
It can definitely happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with a recurve, there's none of that. There's no draw check. There's no sights. There's no peep sight. There's no nothing. There's no release aid.
Yeah.
It's all between your ears, literally.
Yeah.
And there's just something way different about it.
And the urge to just get it to here and then just fling it is so hard to fight.
Yep.
It's so hard.
But you can't do that because then you're going to screw up. So you got to go through the steps and hit your anchor point and, rotate your shoulder around and expand and do everything.
I do that to myself
step
in
by
the
step.
driveway, shooting my dice target. I mean, I'll get in, 10, 15 arrows and I'm shooting good groups. And then I'll step back. And for some reason, this happens to me more when I'm closer than when I'm farther away. If I'm shooting at 20, 25 yards, I have to take my time. I have to really aim. I have to really hold at full expansion and then expand your back and your shoulders into your release.
Yep.
But when I'm close, man, it's like I could shoot this with my eyes closed and it just comes back and boom, it goes off. And then I immediately regret it. And I go, I shouldn't have let that go yet.
Yep.
Sure, I hit the target, but that wasn't right.
Sure.
And it just becomes this mental battle. And I'm putting my clicker back on my bow.
Yep. Yeah, and when I first got into it, I was on the YouTube trying to learn how to do this. So I was watching a lot of Tom Klum stuff, and
Oh, okay.
and everybody's talking about clickers or something that says, Joel Turner talks about having something to fire your shot.
Is there much of Tom Klum stuff on YouTube?
So there's a lot of it, but he sells his programs and stuff, so you won't see a lot of in-depth detail stuff. But if you watch enough of it, you can get a pretty good idea.
Is it real similar to what Joel is teaching too?
So it is, yes. So Joel is definitely on the mental side of things, mentally talking yourself through all your steps. And Tom is the physical side more so and telling you how to do all the physical steps and why.
Right.
But so I think they both work together from time to time.
Oh,
so,
do they?
Yeah, they definitely know each other and
Gotcha.
they reference each other, quite often on their YouTube stuff and that kind of thing.
Interesting.
So I was watching a bunch of that, and I never understood the whole why do you need a clicker nonsense.
Right.
And before I got my Widow, before I won it, I had actually bought a new Satori because I was wanting to get into this traditional stuff. So I bought that, strung it all up. I cobbled together a bunch of parts, just called up the rep and said I need a left-handed handle. I need to hit 50 pounds, with these limbs, and they just sent me a bunch of stuff. Built up just a Dacron string for it.
Yeah.
I strung it up, brand new out of the box, pulled it back, and I cut that thing loose bigger than life. No arrow, no nothing. Yep.
Oh, really?
The only thing that saved that bow is it was a brand new Flemish twist string, and the brace height shrunk 1.5 inches. That string stretched so much on that shot, so the string took all that energy.
Oh, boy.
And that's when I realized I was a snap shooter. And maybe there was something to this whole, clicker and all that. So yeah, it was a surprise to me because I never realized. You've seen snap shooters. They're letting it go with the bow half drawn and all these other shenanigans.
Oh, yeah.
But, yep, definitely. As soon as I hit my anchor point, that string was gone.
Yeah. That has plagued me so much with a traditional bow since I was a teenager that when I shot my first bear, and Jeff was there, he was in the stand right next to me. I remember distinctly when I shot that bear, And it only walked from 15 feet, maybe 20 feet, and then tipped over and died right there. The shot was perfect. It was close, but I remember the first thing that I asked Jeff in the other stand after I remembered how to breathe. I remember turning over to him and I said, did I hold it back long enough? And then I caught myself and thought, he doesn't shoot traditional. And then I rephrased it and I said, how long did I hold my anchor? And that's what I was concerned about. It was still like that. I know I just did it, but did I do it right?
Yep.
And that just really bothers me. I don't know why. But it's like what you're saying is like there's something about shooting a trad bow where there's just something up here. I don't know if it's from 2,000-3,000 years ago, our ancestors shooting a bow, and it was out of necessity that you had to fill that mammoth up with arrows.
Right.
But it's just something subconscious that when you get it back and it's just, okay, shoot.
Well, and there's a lot of like old time instinctive shooters. That's how they shoot, and they are very good at it.
You look at guys like Howard Hill. That guy, I don't think I've ever. Well, that's not true. I've seen him do a few trick shots where he holds his bow back. But when he's shooting normal stuff, or like a new example, I say newer, in this lifetime, Byron Ferguson, master of the longbow. Shooting aspirin out of the air and doing trick shots.
Right.
Who's that European guy?
I know who you're talking
He
about.
shoots a short. It's a short longbow,
it's
and
like
he
the
snap shoots,
Mongolian
and he'll shoot an
something.
arrow and then shoot it out of the air and all that stuff.
The trick shot guy.
Yeah, but he's not holding it back.
No.
But it's all muscle memory and just repetition over volume.
Yep.
And there's guys that talk about that in the trad community they compare it to like, well, it's just like picking up a rock and saying, okay, I'm going to throw this rock to you. And you know that rock is going to get at least somewhere on your chest for a line of reference.
Right.
Because you don't know how much the rock weighs. You don't care how the rock is shaped. You just know that about like this, this is my trajectory. And that over time, shooting a trad bow, and that's why it's called instinctive shooting.
Right. You just
And
figure it out.
I'm trying not to be that way. And since then, in the last couple of years, the last time I was in the shop with you, I switched arrows. I went to those FMJs from my old Easton Camo Hunters that I had still been shooting. So I went to the FMJs, and then I had you put a clicker on, and then I switched to shooting 3 under because that forced me to shoot gap more.
Yeah.
And so that brought the point up, and it made my gaps shorter. Because I always shot split finger growing up. And so your gap with a split finger and an index finger at the corner of your mouth as your anchor point, your gap at 15 yards is huge. And so there's so much more dead space to learn that gap. And that's where I found the most consistency was shooting a gap. And with 3 under, it's a lot more consistent, and it's the best when I have a clicker on that bow.
Yep.
And I've tried to shoot without it again, and it just doesn't
Not
function
working out,
the
huh?
same. Yeah, it's something in my brain is like, okay, now, and then it just goes.
Yep. And I've tried to clicker 2 or 3 different times, and it does not work for me. And I've put some effort into it, and the longer I shoot it, the worse I shoot. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but
So
I've been shooting bows long enough to know that sometimes it's okay to admit that something that's very, very commonly accepted as the only way to do something just doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
And I've decided a clicker doesn't work. Now, I understand needing something to fire your shot.
Right.
So I understand that, but a clicker for me is not it.
So then what has helped you with breaking snap shooting?
So basically going through your steps, if you've done any kind of lessons, or particularly with a compound, because a compound has a lot of different steps from your stance all the way through your follow through. Yeah. Since I'm predominantly a compound target shooter, I'm very familiar with having a shot sequence. So I've just incorporated a shot sequence into my traditional shot. So set your grip. So I anchor on my jaw, so I anchor quite a bit lower.
Oh, do you?
I do. So I can't really use my arrow to aim with because it's so low. The gap's too big.
Right.
But I shoot a black widow that's got a laminated sight window, so I can actually I can aim off my riser. So that's what I used to aim with. So, it's kind of complicated because you got to know roughly your distance. If you're gonna do it like that. But so set your grip. Set your hook. Pre-aim, draw, and then as I'm drawing, I've got to anchor, and then I'm shooting nose button also because my nose happens to line up with the string. So anchor, nose on the string. After I'd spine that bear, it really bothered me because I shot that bear 10 inches higher than I should have, and I didn't know why. And I would randomly throw an arrow a foot high at 20 yards, just practicing and that kind of thing. And I finally figured out it was finger tension. If I load up my index finger more so than my ring finger and vice versa, it changes my point of impact a lot.
Okay.
So that's now part of my shot process.
Are you shooting 3 under or split?
I am shooting 3 under. Yep.
Okay.
I like shooting 3 under. I don't like the way my fingers pinch the arrow when I'm shooting split finger.
Okay.
For teaching particularly kids, it's way easier to teach kids to shoot 3 under because they're not pinching the arrow. They're less apt to pull the arrow off the shelf when they're learning to draw the bow. So I like 3 under across the board.
Okay.
So now that's part of my shot process. Anchor, nose on the string, curl my pinky, and then make sure I load my index finger. And those, like, I talked myself through all of that, and then, expand, make sure I transfer load from my arm back to my shoulder blade, and all of that stuff in rapid succession. But all of those things are going through my head when I'm shooting now.
If you had to put a time clock on it, because this is something that I work on too, is kind of figuring out that process. And that's what I've been doing for the last several weeks since I've been shooting my recurve a bunch again.
Yep.
Because I don't have my clicker on there right now. And we talked about that earlier and how I'm going to get it back on there.
Right.
Without there being another one in town.
I know you can get one. It's just 300 miles away right now.
Right. Exactly. So next trip. But until then, and this is what I've thought, because I have been shooting, but I don't want to continue to shoot with a bad habit. And so I've been doing that, walking myself through a process. And then at one point, I videoed myself, and I set my phone up on my tailgate of my truck and videoed my shot sequence. And I held it plenty long enough, but then I went through and I timed it. So how long does it take you, say, for I don't know, average distance? I don't know if you practice at 15 or 20 or kind of what's your average to shoot in the backyard. But that whole process, how long is it from the time that you start to draw to the time that you normally shoot?
I've never timed it with a traditional bow, but it's a handful of seconds anyway. I mean, it's definitely not snap shooting anymore. Another thing that I've changed the past month or so that is different. Shooting without sights, everybody says you got to really focus on where you want the arrow to go. All your energy should be focused on that point of impact, right? I have almost put aiming on the back burner. So I've got my peripheral view. I see my sight window. I kind of know where the riser needs to be in relation to where I want the arrow to go. Yep. But my focus is on my form and shot execution. And that has helped me keep all my ducks in a row as far as, hand tension and all that, and making sure I'm anchoring correctly. And
interesting.
It's my brain works a lot different than a lot of people that shoot bows, even in compound. I have a different mental process than a lot of people have, and it just seems to work for me.
Interesting.
Yep. Because that was one thing I would notice. Still am super inconsistent. So, like, I'll have a really good day shooting our 3D league with I'll shoot 400 score on 40 targets on our indoor league one night, and then I'll shoot a 370s the next week and have no idea why I'm so inconsistent. You can't miss a 10 or a 12 one night and then shoot 8s and 5s the next night. And I think it's because I get serious, so I'm focusing on where I want my arrow to go, and I'm forgetting all my steps. I'm not anchoring right. Maybe since I anchor with the web of my hand and in my jaw more like this, I'm stretching my thumb out to kind of hit that. So now my hand's farther away from my face. Now I'm not in line, so now I'm going to chuck the arrow away right. So focusing on form has really helped my consistency a lot. And I know that's definitely not the way most trad guys shoot, but it has cleaned me up quite a bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the way that a lot of trad guys shoot is not the way that is not the way that a lot of trad guys should shoot.
That is also true.
And that's something that, even growing up, I was always taught shooting a bow. You'd watch a Fred bear hunting video, and my dad would make a point of saying, you don't shoot like that.
Right.
Fred bear was a fine shot, but this video, he's an old man, and he's been doing it this way his whole life. You're young, and you're going to learn to shoot the right way.
Yeah.
And I'm not even kidding. Like, we would get our bows taken away.
Oh, really?
If we were snap shooting.
Really?
Nice.
And doing that, because that was how big of a deal that form was. Now, we were also living halfway across the world, and we couldn't just go to the archery shop and get more arrows.
Right.
So if we started snap shooting and sling them into rocks, you know.
Yep. You run out of arrows quick that way.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really interesting though. And you know, that's good to explain for people out there because I'm sure even though your situation might not be the most common, somebody else has to be thinking the same thing. Like, well, this is how I think and I can't figure out shooting a trad bow.
Right.
So that might help somebody.
Oh, I would imagine so. Archery is kind of interesting because, especially with the internet out there, there is a box that you are supposed to fit in when you're shooting a bow. You know, pick a discipline. There is a box for that particular discipline that you're supposed to stand a certain way, hold a certain way, anchor a certain way, execute a certain way. And at the end of the day, that is not 100% accurate.
Right.
You know, repeatability is the key.
Right.
So if you do something different, but you do it the same way every time, that's just fine 99% of the time.
Exactly.
Yep.
Do you shoot with much of a cant in your bow hand?
I do. Yep.
About how far over would you say?
About so.
Okay.
I don't really know. I mean, it's not laying over flat like some of the trad guys do, but it's definitely not vertical.
Yeah.
When I first started playing around with recurve a little bit, one of the guys that was shooting it, he says every bow has a natural cant. Just point it out there, and wherever it lays, that's where that bow likes to hang out. And so that's kind of what I do. I just stick it out there, and wherever the bow wants to hang out, that's where I shoot it.
That's an interesting theory.
Yep. Not a lot of science behind it.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see his point for traditional specifically because every grip's shaped a little different. Mine, I have a standard grip on my bow. And it's very round.
Me too.
I would really I've held like a Snyder grip. I think Dylan ordered a demo bow and a Snyder grip. It has a much flatter back, more like a compound.
Yeah.
I think I would prefer that.
Oh, did he get that bow in?
He did. He got it in. It's already been sent back.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Is he going to buy it?
So that was just a demo. He's definitely going to order one, but he wanted to feel the grip.
Okay.
So I forget he was like a 47 pounder or something like that.
I was kind of hoping to see that one before he sent it back.
Yeah, you missed.
I'm going to have to text him and harass him for that.
You should.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, he had it for just a couple of days, I think. I got on his good side somehow, and he sent it to Wasilla so I could shoot it for a couple of days and then let me send it home.
See.
But, yep. No, but it's a much flatter grip, much more like a compound bow, and that's what I've shot for years. So I've always really liked a very flat grip on my bow. It just makes my hand fit in there a lot more consistently.
Interesting.
So I've often thought about calling them up and seeing if I've got a high enough wrist, if they can reshape mine, or if I just need to break down and buy a second Widow one day. But because I think I would shoot a flatter grip more consistently.
Have you ever shot much longbow before?
No, I've shot the occasional arrow out of a longbow, and generally speaking, I'm not a fan. So I don't like the traditional, stick longbows. I don't like the vertical grips. I don't like anything about them.
Yeah.
Just not my cup of tea. I have shot a couple of A&H longbows, and they've got a more recurve style grip, a higher wrist, a little bit bigger palm swell on them. And I like those. Those shoot just fine. But I've never really shot. All the ones I've shot have been buddies, and they're all right-handed. So chuck a few arrows out of them. Yep, that's cool. I like the grip. But I've never spent any serious time behind a longbow.
Interesting. So what arrows do you prefer out of your Black Widow?
Straight ones. I'm a big Easton fan. I've shot Eastons pretty well exclusively since I started shooting.
You like the Axis?
I'm shooting Axis arrows right now. I really like 5mm arrows.
Okay.
There's a lot of voodoo that goes into tuning an arrow to a recurve, and we've talked about that quite a bit. Everything changes everything, especially when you're shooting off the shelf with fingers.
Right.
But I like the 5mm arrow. The Axis is relatively heavy per inch.
Yeah.
I don't geek out over arrow weights too much, but I knew with a slow traditional bow, more arrow weight's definitely going to be better than a light arrow setup. So, and then I'm cheap, not quite as cheap as Mo's dad, but I had over a dozen 125 grain single bevel broadheads out of my compound, and that's what I wanted to shoot. So I built my entire arrow setup around broadheads I already had. So I ended up with 400 spine Axis arrows. I did 75 grain brass inserts with a 25 grain collar, and then that ended up, I trimmed her down, got her to spine out really well, and I think I ended up 540 or something like that, 540 grains.
Right on.
And I didn't shoot a 10-footer by any means, but it zipped right through that bear and didn't even slow down. So I was content with that weight for sure.
And that was with which broadhead?
That was with a 2-blade helix.
Okay.
Yep.
Is it a single bevel or a double
It is
bevel?
a single bevel. Yep.
Okay.
So single bevel, and the helix has a double angle on them. So the front 2/3 probably is a pretty shallow angle, I guess you'd call it, and then it wings out on the back for your cutting width. But yeah.
How far out have you shot those at distance?
So out of my compound, I've shot them 100 yards.
And you don't have any issues with planing?
Nope, not at all.
Interesting.
I was surprised. So I'd always been intrigued by single bevels.
Yeah.
But up until I'd found these, it's a traditional head, so 200 grains and heavier, and I was just not into that with my compound. Yeah. And then I came across the helix broadheads, and they actually make them down to 85 grains, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah, super light. So I bought some right away and shot them out of my compound. I have to clock them horizontally. If I clock them vertically, I get some left-right out of them, and I just chalk it up to horizontal string travel as the arrow's leaving the bow. So if I clock that broadhead flat, it doesn't seem to affect it. And I've heard people say that a single bevel will tend to group a little bit better than the same broadhead with a double bevel, because it helps spin the arrow just like your helical does. So obviously, you match right helical, right bevel.
Yeah.
But I don't shoot groups with them at 60 yards.
Yeah.
You'll cut veins with them. Yeah, they shoot really well. 60 yards, they do really well. 70 yards, they do really well. They start to open up at 70, and everybody's got their own personal opinion on what a good group is, but I feel like it starts to break down beyond that. I've shot them at 100 yards, and they shoot fine. They're definitely more critical than some of the other mechanical broadheads and that kind of thing out there, but
Sure.
100 yards is a long ways anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been very happy with how those broadheads shoot, even out of the compound. And I don't shoot super fast. I'm probably low to mid 270 feet per second out of my compounds. So not wicked fast, but
Just out of curiosity, have you chronoed your recurve?
oh shoot, I think I did when I first got it, but I can't remember what it was.
I've never clocked mine. I've always been
Remind me tomorrow. We'll
just a
shoot it
little
and
bit
see.
curious.
Yeah.
Interesting.
A buddy of mine, he's got a Satori. He's down in Montana. He's turkey hunting with his right now, and I think he just chronoed his, and he was like 169 or something like that. And I don't know any of his setup specs, but
Yeah. That sounds about right. Like something in that ballpark.
Yep.
Be about right for a recurve
right.
in that range.
Yep. I know it's slow, but that's
Well,
okay.
yeah, but it's like you said. Like if you have a lot slower bow, then you are reliant a lot more on weight
Correct.
and momentum
Yep.
for penetration. That's why that exists so much more in the trad world than in the compound world.
Yep. Exactly.
I don't think my compound arrows, my compound arrows are only 340s, full metal jackets,
Right.
and I'm still only shooting. Out of those, I'm only shooting the 125 with a factory insert, so they're not by any means super heavy.
Right.
They're heavier than average probably.
Yeah, you're I can't remember because you got a long draw length, so
Yeah, it's a full length
you
shaft.
got to be 475, 480 grains, just ballparking it.
I want to say it was right around 5, like it was
Is it?
maybe
Yeah.
just over 5.
Yeah, that's plenty of weight, especially
Oh
up
yeah,
the compound.
yeah, and it has zipped through.
Yep.
Everything I've shot with it.
Yeah.
And I've got to show you that bear skull.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that.
I have
yet.
it sitting right there.
Do ya?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep, on the shelf. I'll show that to you before we leave.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so for compound guys that ask, I mean, there's everything under the sun on the internet as far as what the ideal arrow setup is. But,
Right.
If you're shooting 65 plus pounds with any kind of moderate draw length, you can shoot pretty much any arrow you want with, as long as it's flying good and straight
Right.
and you have a sharp broadhead.
Exactly.
Yep, and then you get the shorter draw length, lower draw weight women, kids, teenagers, that kind of thing. Then you're kind of looking at more of a traditional type arrow setup, and I'll often load that arrow up, make it a little heavier than I would for a faster shooting compound.
Sure.
A guy or something like that, because they need that extra weight.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
yep,
And you think you're going to stick with those Helix 2 blades?
till I run out.
How easy are those to sharpen with that dual angle?
I hate them, honestly.
Are they?
So I believe it's a 40-degree bevel.
Okay.
And I feel like it's a little too steep. I've heard of guys being able to get them wicked sharp. I've not yet been able to get them shaven sharp. I've got them close. I can get them to hook a fingernail and that kind of thing, but I can't get them to shave hair. And I've used flat stones. They're not bad to sharpen as far as the technique goes. You've got to sharpen 4 blades instead of 2.
Yep.
Which is whatever. But I just feel like that blade is so steep that I've not been successful getting it super sharp.
And I assume you've tried it on some kind of a jig sharpener too.
So it's so steep, you don't really need a jig. And if you're talking to like a knife sharpening jig, like a tower jig.
Yeah.
So the angle's so steep, I have yet to find a jig that they will fit in. I have tried it before and nothing. But because of the angle, you can take a flat stone and you can rock it up and you can feel it hit 0.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy to sharpen on a flat stone, but it's pretty aggressive.
And so do they have you run away from the bevel or towards it on your stroke?
Oh shoot, I think I have run, it's been a year and a half since I've sharpened broadheads. I think I go back and forth, honestly.
Okay.
Yep.
And then just a little bit of work on the back edge just to knock that burr off.
Just barely knock the burr off. Yep, just lay it flat on stone, and usually just once or twice to knock the burr off, and then I strop it, and the stropping makes a big difference. Yeah. I was surprised how effective a piece of leather is.
Yeah.
In making a blade wicked sharp. And that's definitely made a huge difference in getting them as sharp as I've gotten them, but just not, like Tyler, he likes to shoot the Grizzly single bevels, and I think that's like a 25-degree bevel.
Okay.
That's a lot flatter bevel, and he can get those just wicked scary sharp.
Is that the old long green ones?
Yes, I believe so.
I have a half a dozen of those somewhere.
Oh, nice.
I bought them probably, it has to be almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. You killed anything with those?
Uh-uh.
I remember you shooting them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should use those this year.
There you go.
I don't know. And this is something that you and I were talking about at the shop earlier is and this is something that, again, like you mentioned, Tyler, he shot a bunch of those 2-blade and a lot of the single bevel stuff too. I have been really impressed with blood trails on my bow bear so far. The first one I shot with my recurve was with that old Muzzy Phantom.
Yep.
Big 2-blade with bleeders.
Yep.
So you're cutting more surface than just 2 blades. And then every bear that I've killed with a bow since then has been with an M3 or an original Montec, a 3-blade out of my compound. And, man, they bleed like a stuck pig.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit hesitant to go to a 2-blade because I feel like it would just kind of close up.
Sure.
I think we were talking about that earlier at the shop.
And another thing I literally just thought of, because that was one complaint I had about those helix. I've shot several animals with them out of my compound.
Yeah.
And they die really fast, but they don't seem to bleed a whole lot. And then, like I mentioned before, we were able to follow blood pretty easy when we weren't just following noise.
Yeah.
But I was also in tree stand for that shot, and everything else had been off the ground.
Get a low exit.
Yep. So you got a low exit on that bear versus a high lung, which is typically what I like to shoot mid to high lung on most critters on the ground. So those by default aren't going to bleed near as well as something that's shot from the top down.
Yeah.
So
got to bleed better than the slick trick.
Yeah, not a slick trick fan.
Well,
I've only killed 1-2 bears with a slick trick.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think
2.
probably 2 because
Yeah.
that big sow,
and they both died quick. But I mean,
and then that big chocolate one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the big chocolate one is the one that hemmed and hawed and died right underneath our platform.
Oh,
but like that big sow, no blood. I mean,
Yeah.
ran 50 yards and died pretty quick, but like no
No
blood.
blood.
But that's something that I'm used to, that having that 3-blade big hole, and they just bleed.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about sticking with the M3s out of my recurve this spring. As long as they shoot good in the target, which I'm sure they would. It's only it's only an 11-yard shot at the bait.
Right.
So, but I wouldn't have any hesitation shooting the bear at a bait with them. I don't know that I would want to stretch them out too far in other situations because you don't have that velocity in the arrow. It just feels like it's a little bit more to have to push that broadhead through with that increased surface area. I don't know.
Well, I know, and bears over bait, you can shoot them with just about anything as long as it's sharp.
Yeah.
But I remember when Tyler first shot single bevels, he used to shoot Montecs, if I remember right.
Did he?
I think so, before he single bevel. And he said that he seemed to get better penetration with the single bevels because your arrow's spinning.
Right.
As it's flying through the air, and with that single bevel will spin as it hits its hide.
Right.
And he was thinking that the traditional double bevel broadheads, the 3-blade in that case, was stopping the spin and sucking some energy versus a single bevel that just allows the just twist right through the target.
Well, and that's a really
so
good
that's
point
kind of
too.
interesting little detail I'd never thought of till he'd mentioned it.
I'm going to text him about it.
There you go.
I'll see.
Yep. He also uses stone broadheads, so.
Yeah. He has literally killed them with a stick and a sharp rock. So that's kind of the ultimate accomplishment there with a trad bow.
Right. Yep. So yeah, for the bear bait, I think you would do just fine with literally any fixed blade you pick.
You know what else I've got too that I haven't shot out of my recurve yet? I bought several of these years ago, and they planed real bad out of my compound.
Yeah.
The Magnus. It's not the Stinger.
Oh.
It's the short one.
Oh.
And it has bleeders.
The Black Max.
They are black. But, I mean, the angle of the main blades is like this. And they're real stubby.
Yeah.
But that's a 2-blade with bleeders.
There you go.
A little bit less to have to punch through something like that 3 is. Easy to sharpen.
Yep.
Put them on a stone. I might have to shoot those. I forgot I even had those until right now.
Burn up your leftovers.
Well, I think I shot them out of my compound for a couple of nights, and I couldn't get them. Yeah, they were planing real bad.
It's really weird how some bows don't like some broadheads like that for no apparent reason.
Yeah, and then the same bow will shoot a no-vent 3-blade, like a dart out to 50 yards.
Yep. Did you spin those Magnus where the ferrule straight and everything? Was that part of the problem?
I never messed with that.
Okay.
That'd be a good point, though.
Yeah,
and that's something with a compound, is I've always been extremely basic with a compound. I don't know a lot about the technicalities of it.
Gotcha.
Like guys will talk about, well, like what you said is getting the broadheads clocked horizontal or vertical or at an angle. And I've heard of that, but I just never think to do it when I'm experimenting with it.
There's a lot of people, like industry experts, that say it doesn't matter how a broadhead is clocked if your bow is tuned correctly. I have noticed an impressive improvement clocking on my broadheads, so I'll continue to do it. And if a guy cares, I would recommend that he takes the time to do it. It's a lot more hassle, especially with the way most components are installed in arrows now. A lot of it's just super glued in or some kind of hard epoxy or something like that, so you can't clock them easily.
Do you pretty much just still use hot melt on all your arrows?
Personally, I do. Yep, because I want to clock broadheads. You can also, the tolerances are pretty good, but you still need room for glue, so there is room for some adjustment in there. So I can usually get them to spin perfectly straight with hot melt. Yep. So I'm a big fan of hot melt. It's not as strong as epoxy, so I will break an arrow if I hit a rock on after it goes through an animal, but I'm not super concerned at that point, honestly.
Yeah, whatever.
So
personally, I still have hot melt when I have to put a new insert in or whatever like that. I still use it.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me.
Yep, and you can get things out, and you can especially on trad stuff, we can change insert weights, and there's a lot of versatility using hot melt.
How do you get other inserts or things of that nature out?
If they're epoxied or super glued, you don't.
Really?
It is what it is. Yep.
It's just in there.
On occasion, I've gotten some 5-minute epoxy inserts out using heat very carefully, and it's definitely not good for anything.
Yeah.
But I have gotten them out in the past, but generally speaking, it's not feasible. Yep.
Interesting.
So if you want to be able to tinker, hot melt is definitely your friend.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Anything to add, Mo?
I say I'm looking forward to getting my bow out. Sit in a conversation like this, and
you have a recurve yet?
I have a cheap one. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I haven't shot it for years.
Remember what the draw weight is?
No, I don't remember. I think it might be like 40.
Perfect.
Yeah. I haven't shot anything with my compound in 5-6 years now.
What was the last one you shot with
that Big Sow?
The Big Sow?
Yeah.
That was 2018.
Long, way too long.
Yeah.
So I need to get that thing out.
I shot it
last year. That's my plan this year. Well, last year I wished I'd shot that monster bear I shot last year. I wished I'd shot it with a bow.
That would have been
Pope and Young.
What was that, 19 and change?
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a monster.
That's an impressive bear, especially for that area.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shot it with a 30-30.
Damn. Why
hand load.
Why are you such a big gun?
Custom hand load.
Jeez.
yeah. 30-30. Practically a cannon.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of cannons, what are your thoughts? This is completely off the rails. What are your thoughts on double rifles for bears?
I would love to have one.
Yeah.
Absolutely love to. It'd have to be the right cartridge, though. I'm not interested in owning any of the nitro stuff.
Okay.
Is that because of ammo availability?
Yep. That's exactly why.
That's just no big deal.
$100 a round. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like one in something like that. That's a classic. And the issue for me is the price of entry is so incredibly high.
Yep.
But the enticing factor of it is you can double tap a brown bear.
Right.
Boom, boom. You know, probably not that fast, but it's quick.
Pretty close. Yep.
Something like a 416 in a double
There
would
you go.
be cool.
Yeah.
It's not so much gun that it's, and this is for me too. Like physically speaking, I'm not a stocky guy.
Yep.
I can take recoil, but I don't want to take a double rifle that's a 470 nitro.
But you got two barrels that you're holding on to too, which means your gun's gonna be significantly heavier than yours.
Yeah.
So you could probably soak up a little more
Possibly, yeah,
caliber
possibly.
than you think.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the biggest gun I've shot is a 416 Remington.
Okay.
I don't think I've shot anything bigger than that.
Gotcha.
As far as like hunting rifles go.
Yep.
And a 416 Remington and a bolt gun is surprisingly not that bad.
Okay.
Compared to a stout 375 load. And a 375 isn't that bad.
Okay.
And again, it depends on the bullet weight and the charge weight.
Sure.
So last Saturday, I was shooting one of my guide guns that I'm going to take this spring here, and guide and brown bear hunts. Which by the time this episode comes out, I'll already be in the field.
Yeah, yeah.
I forgot about that. But I was shooting 3 different types of ammo. One of them was to get the new scope on paper at 100 yards through a bore sight, and that was the cheapest ammo, which was Hornady factory ammo, and that was a 270 grain interlock type bullet. And that, when I say cheap, it's only about $100 a box. So I bore sighted it with that, 3 or 4 rounds of that, and then I shot. So for this gun, it's a 375 H&H. It's my Model 70, and I have almost always brought my 375 Ruger, and I have hammers hand loaded up for that 375 Ruger that I used last year.
What bullet was that?
The 270 shock hammer.
Okay, I couldn't remember. Yeah.
And those worked awesome. Those are great loads.
Yeah.
Awesome bullet. But I want to carry my Model 70 this year. And I decided that too late in the winter to get more bullets to reload for the H&H.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to shoot factory ammo this spring anyway, which is, that's fine. Then I went from that 270 to then shooting the 300 grain Barnes TSX factory load. And even the recoil difference between that 270 grain bullet and a 300 grain bullet is, to me, significant.
Is it?
And then after several groups of that and, really getting my zero honed in for as good as that gun shoots. It's not a tack driver, quote unquote.
Right.
As everybody likes to call their rifle. But once I got it, a good group, just high at 100. That way I'm landing.
Half-inch group all day long?
Yeah, half-inch gun all day long. Then I went and shot some 250 grain Hornady CX bullets that I got years ago from Cody in Delta. I think it's his cousin or some relative of his that loads ammo down there and they sell it.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. Anyway, so I had
bought some of that stuff.
I had bought a few boxes of that stuff from him during COVID when you couldn't get much 375 ammo. And so I think I probably shot 8 or 10 rounds of that stuff. And the difference between that 250 and the 300 grain load was huge.
Really?
I mean, it felt like a different gun, just with a different bullet weight.
Oh, wow.
And it's not that 250 was toned down and going slow. It was going just as much contemporary velocity as that 300 grain factory load is going.
So do they have to, I'm not a gun expert by any stretch. Are they putting more powder behind the heavier bullet to get the same speed?
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Gotcha.
So you're pushing a 250 or a 300 So it just takes more force to get
Right.
the 300 out the barrel, and the recoil is just very
Right.
very
Well, and
different.
powder speed, how fast your powder burns has
So if you were to
affects it
take
too.
2 cartridges, put the same powder in them,
Yeah.
same amount, and then put 250 and a 300 grain bullet in them, the recoil will be significantly more with the 300 grain. Or
Essentially, yeah.
would it? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
That's
I
wild.
mean, it will be more with the 300 grain with the heavier powder load for it, and it won't necessarily be more powder, but it might be would that usually be a slower burning powder on a heavier bullet.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so it just takes longer for it to push that bullet out the barrel.
I see.
Right? And so that while it's compressed time, you feel it in your shoulder.
Gotcha.
And so, I guess the only reason I brought that up is like shooting that gun. After shooting 20, 25 rounds or so at the range, I wasn't tired of shooting it, but I didn't want to shoot another 40.
Right.
And the danger with that is that you can develop, like we were talking about earlier, with that target panic mentality with a trad bow.
Yeah.
I don't have that with a gun, and I don't have that with a compound, but I have that with a trad bow. But a lot of guys with a rifle struggle with that
Sure.
because they're anticipating that reaction of the gun going off.
Right.
They're anticipating that recoil. And so shooting a heavier recoiling rifle a lot is more prone to develop that kind of reaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, I haven't bought a 416, number one, because I don't feel like I need it. I haven't had to shoot a brown bear yet that I felt like should have been deader faster than I already did with a 375.
Yeah.
But if I wanted a double, I wouldn't want it to be something that was so outrageously heavy of a recoil that I didn't enjoy shooting it.
Makes sense.
So like a 416 Rigby would be a classic cartridge to use in it. Old Africa type cartridge. 416 Remington would be a lot more practical.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would go with like a full-on safari type cartridge
Nitro or
for a
anything like
double.
that.
I just don't think so.
Okay.
Didn't Joe used to shoot a double?
I don't know.
I know I've seen pictures of
Yeah?
him with a double rifle on Kodiak way back
okay.
in the day. And I don't know if he got it from a client or something like that, but he carried a double for a while.
No kidding. Nice.
I don't know anybody else that has, but I could see the merit of it.
It's something I've always wondered about because, they're at one point anyway, they were super popular in Africa. I don't know about currently. I mean, I'm sure there's still guys that run them.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
But so I have a side-by-side 4570 I acquired a couple of years ago. It's never been shot.
Oh, do you
so
really?
I haven't shot it yet.
Okay.
I don't think you can run hot loads in it. So I don't
Really?
know how good a gun it would be for like an actual bear gun up here.
What make is it?
So it is branded Remington, made by a Russian company. I've looked it up.
Interesting.
Made by a Russian.
Bakel or something like that. If you look
No,
it up
I think-
online,
didn't I-
it's a thing, but it's got Remington on it, but it's made by a different manufacturer.
That is really like
Seems like you and I have talked about that gun before.
Yeah.
there's something in the back of my head like trying to poke its head up.
A friend of mine bought it from a coworker that needed money back in the day, and I told him, if you ever sell it, I'm buying it. Here we are 15 years later, I finally bought it.
Do you know about how long the barrel is? Or the barrels are?
So long. It's a pretty short gun, generally
Like
speaking.
18, 19
Yeah, probably
inches,
an 18-inch barrel.
That could be fun.
Yep, I'm torn between
See, now that's a
shooting
big
it
gun. That's a
and,
big gun
and
right there.
keeping it unfired. So
Oh, it's still on fire.
as far as I know, nobody's ever shot it.
Okay. Well, you need to break that thing. I'll tell you what, Andrew. Bring it up here, and I'll do the favor for you.
I'm sure you would.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually bought some ammo for just some factory loads because my dad's just got hot loads for his 4570.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna bring it up
Yeah.
that last year
Yeah.
just to have it because
Yeah.
you should take a gun. But he had one, and then Chris has a Henry 4570
Yeah.
again. So there's plenty of 4570s laying around.
Right.
I didn't need to scratch that one up in the woods.
Yeah.
So,
is it a
yep.
nice Woodstock blued finish?
Yeah, nothing wild and crazy, but yeah, Woodstock blue. Yep.
It would be handy if they could make a double rifle that was stainless and a
That would be
synthetic
cool.
stock.
That would be really
That
cool.
would sell up here.
Yep.
And if it wasn't $15,000 to $18,000.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what you're describing sounds familiar because I remember finding something like that was like a couple grand, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't go for a lot.
Yeah.
I got it for a song and a dance, but I think, gun broker, they were $2,500, something like
Wow.
that. They're definitely not in that 10 grand and up range that the classic doubles are. Yep.
Interesting.
But I've always wondered, because everybody up here runs bolt guns for bears, and I don't know if it's because of the stainless synthetic aspect of it,
Yeah.
or if it's because they want that third round, or what it is.
Ammunition cost.
There's that little detail.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Well, I mean, for a bait gun, that last summer or fall, I picked up a new Ruger-made Marlin 4570.
Oh, okay.
I got the Trapper one. It was on sale for, again, a song and a dance. It's a little short 16-inch barrel.
Nice.
It's a sweet little gun, man.
I bet.
It's awesome. It comes with Skinner peeps on it. There's no pick rail on that one, like the full length.
the guide
The
gun.
guide.
Yeah, the 18-inch SBL or the
Yeah,
guide. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one comes with a pick rail on it. This one you can get a
Yeah, see-
6-inch pick rail for it.
The
really?
guide gun you can shoot a T-Rex with because it says it on the website.
It used to.
Does it
I
not?
don't
Did
know
they
if it's-
change that?
I don't know if it's on there anymore.
See, that's the one I have.
I don't know.
That's the one to have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that one that I got, I can shoot full steam loads through it, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not running like the 430 grain plus P plus buffalo bore stuff through it.
Oh, okay.
I'm shooting the Underwood ammo with
Are you
the
shooting Underwood in that?
with that extreme penetrator
Oh, that's right.
325 grain bullet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't kick anywhere near with
I
those.
imagine
nothing
not.
the same as a 430 plus P plus, but it does the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a matter of fact, I was asking Tyler about it because I saw that him or his dad had used a lever gun at one point at a bait not too long ago. I think it was his dad, and I think it was a 450 Marlin.
Okay.
And he had used the same bullet, I believe. And so I was asking him about it, and he said, worked great. The bear died fast. Yeah. But I'm using those because on a rib shot on a bear, it creates more of that temporary wound cavity
Okay.
than a hard cast does. And so it's a little bit lighter, a little bit faster, less recoil, and there's a bigger wound channel.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay.
But it does the same thing as a hard cast.
Nice.
So I haven't shot anything with it yet.
Isn't the Hornady FTX? That's a mono, isn't it?
No, they have two of them.
The one that's in the 4570 load, or is
Well,
that not quite an
no,
FTX?
I believe the FTX is
I don't
a
remember.
lead
Hornady's
core
got so many
expanding.
things that sound
it?
alike.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Is it really?
There's another one.
The Leverushin ammo.
Yeah, I think there's two bullets in that one. The Monoflex is copper.
That's it. That's what I'm
The
thinking of. That's
Monoflex
why.
is copper.
Oh,
the
gotcha.
FTX is a lead
Yeah.
core.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they both have those.
And that's a
red tips on them.
325. Yeah.
325s, and I think the Monoflex is even available in the 250.
Is it really?
If I'm not mistaken.
Maybe
It's
it is now.
Pretty light.
So I'm shooting a
It's got to be a
276.
short little bullet.
I'm shooting a 276 hammer. It's got like a
Okay.
quarter-inch hollow point on it.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I'm going 2,200 feet per second, which is really fast for a 4570.
Out of an
There's
18-inch barrel.
no recoil, and kills them. I mean, it's over a bait, but
You right?
yeah,
Yeah.
kills
Heck
them.
yeah.
Kills them easy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as easy as that 30-30 does. Though.
Oh my goodness! 6-foot bear with a 4570, 276 grain bullet, ran 20 yards. 7-foot bear with a 30-30, 120 grain bullet.
Just like that, huh?
Yep,
And didn't you hit that one high? Was that the way the
I did.
story went?
So the target panic thing, yeah, I wasn't really target panic, but I'd been shooting that 4570, which is a Remington make Marlin 4570,
Okay.
and I have a old JM stamp 30-30.
Nice.
Okay, both great guns, very very similar, but that JM stamp, everything about it is smoother, triggers nicer, everything. Those Remington 4570s the triggers are terrible.
I had one and I don't have it anymore.
Me too.
And I've never had a malfunction with it at all. Like
really?
I've never had an
Well, that's
issue
good.
with it. I just don't like the trigger. I need to buy the upgrades. You can buy some aftermarket stuff. But the trigger was so bad on that 4570, and I'd been shooting that. And then I got the 30-30 out that I pulled, and I just pulled high when I shot.
Oh, sure.
From shooting. I mean, it feels like the same gun, but it's not. And that's,
30-30 is a lot more cowboy.
That's true.
yeah. I mean, or is it though?
It
Well,
definitely is over 45.
The bear definitely thought so.
Oh, yeah.
Because he just laid down and quit like, wow, this is it's like Wild Bill Hickok.
I mean, I
up there
had,
in that tree.
but I've got that 120 doing 2,800 feet per second.
It's screaming.
Nice.
Out of
It's screaming.
What's the barrel on that? Like a 20?
It's, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
but
Really?
It's
Yeah.
pretty compact.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But the double thing is interesting.
It's a lot quieter.
So,
Though. Yeah.
After we end this podcast, I want to look that gun up
Yeah.
and see if there's some info that we can find.
Wasn't there a website back when we were talking about
I
it?
think there was. And so we can do some homework on what your pressure allowances are and see what your parameters are.
Right.
And
Well, because there's 3 different ones for 4570.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, most guns have
Yep.
one for
Right.
most cartridges.
Yep.
But
Well, even 30-06 has 2
Oh, really?
M1. and
there's the
30-06.
M1. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
Well,
right.
Interesting.
have we yammered on enough?
You're the boss.
Got anything else you want to say?
Not particularly.
Anything else interesting? Well, Andrew, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Yeah, not a problem
We
at all. Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
And if folks in the Fairbanks or North Pole or North Starborough greater area want an archery shop to go to, check out Screaming Eagle Archery.
Yes, sir.
They got a shop in town right off College Road.
Yep. And we're in Wasilla if you're down there too.
Yes, absolutely. Finest archery shop in the land.
I would agree.
Even Cam Haynes goes there.
He does. Yep. So does Kip. We've had Kip in the store
Oh, does
several
Kip
times.
go there too?
Yep.
Right on.
Pretty neat. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. The Wasilla store is actually in a building that Roy built.
Oh, that's
So
right.
that's
Okay.
the big connection there. So
Yeah.
Chris and Beth have known Roy and his wife and everybody, the whole family, for a long time. So, yep,
Yep. Big history.
absolutely.
Well, with that, thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you to our partners, Stealthy Hunter, Initial Ascent Packs, and Hammer Bullets. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, please share it with a friend. Like the show on whatever platform you're listening to it on. Leave us a 5-star review and a positive written review as well. That is the only way that we ask folks to support the show these days. So if you do that on whatever platform you're listening to us on, that helps get the show in front of more listeners and helps us grow. Hope you guys are enjoying springtime as much as we are right now. And good luck, shoot straight, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.